Honorable colleagues, distinguished guests, it's a great pleasure for me to be here with you today and open the economic panel of this conference. Let me start by saying that the EU and Israel might have some disagreements on this and that political issue, and just like among friends or in a family, every now and then we tend to have debates. I would even say emotionally charged arguments about them. But this should not overshadow the deep and close relation we enjoy and have had over the decades on economic and trade matters. Cooperation has been growing persistently despite of turbulences in the world economy and regular downturns in this region and also from time to time in Europe. Yet our economies have grown closer every year. And when I say our economies, I mean, of course, the increasing cooperation between Israel and the 28 EU member states, but I also mean an equally strong cooperation between Israel and the EU level. That is a significant increasing approximation between our regulatory environments. These are very close ties which our relative geographic proximity only serves to reinforce. I'm sure you're aware of the web of agreements signed between the EU and Israel during our decades-long cooperation under the umbrella of the overarching association agreement, which was signed 21 years ago this year. These agreements, among others, cover trade, agriculture, research and development, and civil aviation, to name just a few. So it's neither a coincidence nor a surprise that while Israel seems intent on strengthening its relations with other markets such as Asia, Africa, and South America, its economic relations with the EU remain consistently strong and stable. Let me just mention a few figures. Over the past 20 years, trade between the EU and Israel has more than doubled from 14 billion to more than 30 billion. Imports from Israel have increased by 280% and exports to Israel by 175%. The EU is Israel's largest trading partner, with over 40% of Israel's imports coming from the EU countries and more than 1/3 of Israel's export aimed at the EU market. In order to put this into a wider perspective, let me quote the recent report of the Israeli Export Institute. In the first half of 2016, Israel exported exactly the same amount of goods to France and Italy as to China. Similarly, it's worth noting that over the same period, 27% of Israel's export went to Asia, Africa, and Latin America combined, while the EU share over the same period was 32%. And we are proud of that. This is a solid basis on which to build on. Shifting from quantity to quality, let me add that Israel's trade with the EU is highly diversified, covering a wide range of products. The diversity and maturity of the structure of our bilateral trade is unparalleled in any other country in the region. This implies, in practical terms, that both sides export high value-added and cutting-edge products, not only raw materials or basic agricultural products. And the same holds true for sharing best practices, as here again, our relationship is very balanced. In some areas, we can learn from your experience, and in others, Israel may profit from our know-how. A good example of Israel's excellence is the startup, innovation, and entrepreneurship area, where amazing developments have taken place in this country in the past 2 decades. Israel has acquired a leading global position in entrepreneurship and innovation, producing extraordinary results in sectors that capitalize on innovative approaches. In these areas, we would like to tap more into the opportunities present in this country and learn from the Israeli experience. For example, we would like to see more European venture capital networks injecting investment in Israeli startups. Similarly, we would like to see more Israeli startups looking to the European market as an attractive entry point when going global. The EU has the largest internal market in the world with over 500 million customers who are eager to adapt new solutions. We also have schemes available to support startups looking to establish themselves in the member states. We see a potential big win-win for both sides here. In this context, I should like to mention an already existing win-win situation, namely the EU long-standing scientific cooperation with Israel. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the Israeli association to the EU research and development programs, in which Israel is a very active, very valued, and also very successful partner. Already under the current Horizon 2020 program, which began in 2014, over 500 Israeli researchers are participating in over 400 projects. The particular strength of Israeli researchers lie in the European Research Council grants, which support cutting-edge research. 4 Israeli research institutes, the Weizmann Institute, the Hebrew University, Tel Aviv University, and the Technion, are among the top host institutions for these very prestigious programs. Notwithstanding the above, it should also be stressed that while in a number of sectors Israel is advanced and leading globally, it still has some way to go in addressing the issues of low productivity and weak competitive position in significant parts of the economy. These are concentrated mostly in the traditional manufacturing sector, but also in the food sector and big parts of the services sector, such as banking, retail, and tourism. This also relates to the long-standing and also politically sensitive issue of the cost of living. We know that addressing these challenges is both high on the agenda of the Israeli government, which has initiated reforms to open up the economy to more competition, thereby both trying to curb sometimes disproportionately high prices, while also improving competitive position of the Israeli firms concerned. In these areas, the EU has accumulated considerable experience, and we are trying to support the process as best we can, among other things by providing experience and best practices gained in similar reforms we have already implemented ourselves, be it in overhauling subsidies in agriculture or in rendering the labor market more flexible. We would like, we work closely with most of the Israeli ministries and bring experts from the member states who have managed such transitional processes and can help the Israeli government to avoid mistakes and adopt already proven regulation and approaches. Our twinning and TIEX programs have been instrumental in bringing European and Israeli markets together. Recent programs and events on issues of statistics, telecommunication, import procedures, environment, and agriculture allow for closer cooperation and facilitate trade and exchange of best practices. We are confident that in spite of hesitations and some delays, the Israeli government will pursue these very important reforms. Here again, we see a mutual beneficial situation possibly emerging, reducing consumer prices in Israel and allowing European companies better market access. I hope I have succeeded in passing on the basic messages through these few examples, that the vast scope of EU-Israel economic interaction is not something that belongs to the past and is not on the decline, but rather it has a surprisingly stable foundation, both with new opportunities and areas of cooperation constantly emerging. I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today and look forward to an interesting discussion in the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador.